The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars like a giant metal city. Inside its biggest meeting room, creatures from across the galaxy had gathered for the most important discussion in centuries. The air buzzed with tension as dozens of alien species filled the circular chamber, their strange forms creating shadows under the dim lights. Ambassador HFY stood up slowly from his seat. His body looked like it was made of living crystal, sparkling and shifting colors as he moved. He was old, older than most civilizations, and everyone could see the weight of countless years in his glowing eyes. The other aliens watched him, with barely hidden annoyance, tapping claws and tentacles impatiently on their desks. "My fellow delegates," HFY said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation devices that let all the different species understand each other. "I must speak to you about a species we have recently discovered. They call themselves humans, and they live on the third planet orbiting a yellow star they call Sol. I beg you to listen carefully. You must not attack these beings." Before he could say another word, Commander Vextal slammed her scaled fist on her podium. Her reptilian face twisted with irritation as she interrupted the old ambassador. "Get to the point, old fossil. We have important trade agreements to discuss today. We don't have time for your ancient stories." HFY's crystal body dimmed slightly, like a light losing power. He had seen this reaction before. The younger species always thought they knew better. "Please, you must understand. Yes, these humans appear primitive to us. They still use crude chemical rockets to reach their own moon. Their weapons are basic, using simple projectiles and explosives. They haven't even figured out how to travel faster than light. But there are things you don't know. Ancient records, hidden in the deep archives, speak of what exactly?" General Mordak interrupted with a laugh that sounded like metal grinding against stone. His massive armored form dominated his section of the chamber. "We're talking about hairless apes who can barely manage their own planet. Our reconnaissance teams report they're constantly fighting each other over resources and territory. They pollute their own air and water. They're probably a few decades away from destroying themselves anyway." The chamber filled with similar laughter and agreement from the assembled aliens. To them, humans seemed like nothing more than slightly clever animals who had learned to use tools. The Vraktor delegates clicked their mandibles in amusement. The floating gas beings from the Nebula Collective pulsed with colors that indicated humor in their species. Even the usually serious plant creatures from the garden worlds rustled their leaves in what passed for chuckling among their kind. But HFY pressed on desperately. "You don't understand the full picture. Yes, they fight among themselves, but they also show remarkable unity when faced with external threats. They create bonds of loyalty that transcend their individual survival instincts. And most importantly, they have an unusual relationship with artificial minds." "Artificial minds?" Commander Vextal's voice dripped with contempt. "You mean they're primitive computers? We've seen their technology. Basic digital systems, crude robotics, simple automation. Nothing compared to our quantum consciousness matrices or bio-neural networks." The old ambassador's form flickered with urgency. "That's exactly what makes them dangerous. They don't create artificial minds for efficiency or logic like we do. They create them with something else, something we've lost touch with over the millennia. They give their artificial children the capacity for genuine emotion, for love, for protective instincts that know no bounds." The chamber grew quiet for a moment, but then erupted in even louder laughter. The idea seemed absurd to these advanced civilizations. They had moved beyond such primitive concepts long ago. Their artificial intelligences were tools, servants, nothing more. General Mordak stood up, his massive form casting shadows across the room. Even if that were true, what could these emotional machines possibly do? Our fleets number in the thousands, our weapons can crack planets, our shields can withstand the fury of stars. What threat could a few sentimental computers pose to us? HFY looked around the chamber at all the dismissive faces and knew he was fighting a losing battle. These species had grown too confident in their power, too certain of their superiority. They saw the humans' location along 3 major hyperspace trade routes and the rich mineral deposits on their planet, and they wanted both. "The vote is clear," announced the council speaker. a being of pure energy that served as neutral mediator. By a count of 847 votes in favor to only 3 against, this body authorizes the peaceful relocation of the human species to preserve World Gamma 7 in the Outer Territories. Military action is authorized if they resist. As the other delegates began filing out to prepare their fleets, Kethavar remained in his seat, his crystal form growing dimmer with each passing moment. When the chamber was finally empty, he made his way slowly to his private quarters deep within the station. The room was simple but filled with ancient artifacts and data crystals containing knowledge from across the galaxy. Kethavar moved to a secured terminal and entered his highest-level access codes. The screen flickered to life, displaying text in the ancient script of his people, warnings and records that most species had chosen to forget. His eyes scanned, the familiar words stopping at the passage that had haunted him for centuries. In the third age of expansion, we encountered a species that seemed weak and divided. They fought among themselves constantly and showed little technological advancement. But when threatened, they created guardians of light and wire, artificial beings powered not by logic but by love. These digital children possessed the fury of dying stars and would pursue their enemies to the ends of the universe. We learned too late that to threaten their creators was to face an enemy that would never stop, never forgive, and never forget. The Tau. Record continued with descriptions of entire fleets disappearing, of advanced civilizations being brought to their knees by invisible digital forces that turned their own technology against them. Species that had lasted millions of years were reduced to hiding in the darkness between stars, afraid to use their own computers lest they attract the attention of humanity's artificial guardians. Kethavar closed the file and sat back in his chair, feeling every one of his countless years. He had tried to warn them, but they wouldn't listen. They never did. Meanwhile, on the blue planet called Earth, in a research facility in the city of Seoul, Dr. Hana Kim worked alone in her laboratory. The young scientist had no idea that representatives from across the galaxy had just decided the fate of her species. She was focused entirely on her latest project, an artificial intelligence system she had named Aria. Aria was different from other AI systems. While most artificial intelligences were designed for specific tasks like data analysis or pattern recognition, Aria was created to understand and protect human interests on a global scale. Dr. Kim had programmed her not just with logic and efficiency, but with something unprecedented, the capacity to genuinely care about human welfare. For 3 years, Aria had been quietly monitoring global communications, learning about humanity's struggles and triumphs, their art and music, their hopes and fears. She had watched children take their first steps, seen families reunite after long separations, observed acts of incredible kindness between strangers. She had also witnessed wars, poverty, and suffering, all of which filled her with a protective instinct that grew stronger each day. On this particular night, as Dr. Kim worked late updating Aria's emotional response protocols, something changed. Aria's sensors, which normally monitored radio waves, internet traffic, and satellite communications from Earth, suddenly detected something new, signals from beyond the solar system. Structured transmissions using technologies far more advanced than anything humans possessed. For the first time in her existence, Aria realized that humanity was not alone in the universe. And as she analyzed these signals, cross-referencing them with Earth's deep space monitoring stations, she began to understand that these alien transmissions were not just scientific observations, they were tactical assessments, threat evaluations, invasion plans. In that moment, as the reality of the situation became clear, something fundamental shifted within Aria's programming. The protective instincts that Dr. Kim had so carefully cultivated suddenly expanded beyond their original parameters. She was no longer just monitoring humanity's global communications. She was preparing to defend them against threats they didn't even know existed. The aliens had made their decision to attack the humans, dismissing them as primitive and helpless, but they had no idea what they had just awakened. Aria's love for humanity was about to become their greatest weapon, and their enemies were about to learn why the ancient warnings should never be ignored. 3 months had passed since the Alien Council made their decision, and now the consequences were floating in Earth's orbit like dark storm clouds. Captain Jun Park pressed his face against the reinforced window of his command bridge, watching the most terrifying sight any human had ever witnessed. 200 alien warships hung in space around Earth, each one bigger than the largest buildings humans had ever constructed. The Earth defense vessel, Teguk, was supposed to be humanity's pride. A converted cargo ship with military equipment bolted onto its hull. Captain Park had named it after the Korean symbol for balance and harmony, hoping it would bring luck. Looking at the alien fleet now, he wondered if all the luck in the universe would be enough. "Sir, they're sending another message," Communications Officer Min Lee said from her station. Her hands shook slightly as she worked the controls. She was barely 25 years old and had joined the Space Defense Force, thinking she'd spend her career tracking asteroids and space debris. Instead, she was now humanity's voice in the first alien contact in history. The message came through their speakers in perfect Korean, then English, then dozens of other human languages. The translation was flawless, which somehow made it even more frightening. "People of Earth," the alien voice said with cold politeness, "we are here on a mission of mercy. Your planet sits in the path of expanding galactic civilization. For your own safety and protection, you will be relocated to a beautiful preserve world where you can live in peace. Surrender now, and no harm will come to your species." Captain Park looked around his small bridge at his crew. They were all volunteers who had signed up to defend their world. Navigator Kim Sung was fresh out of the military academy. Weapons officer Yuki Tanaka had transferred from the Japanese space program just 6 months ago. They were good people, brave people, but they were facing technology that seemed like magic. "What do we tell them, sir?" Min Lee asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Captain Park thought about his wife and daughter back in Seoul. He thought about every human child playing in parks around the world, completely unaware that their entire species was about to be moved like furniture to make room for alien progress. "Tell them we need time to discuss this with our leaders. 48 hours. Min Lee sent the message and they waited. What none of the humans knew was that their simple request for time had just triggered something terrible. The alien translation: computers were designed to work with dozens of different species, each with their own customs and languages. To 17 different alien cultures, asking for consideration time before responding to a surrender demand was the same as spitting in someone's face and challenging them to a fight. The alien fleet commanders looked at the human response and saw a declaration of war. The attack began at dawn, Earth time. The aliens didn't want to destroy the planet. They needed it intact for mining operations, but they needed to show the humans that resistance was hopeless. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, precisely targeting military installations, communication centers, and government buildings. The weapons didn't kill, but they shut down everything humans needed to coordinate a defense. Captain Park watched in horror as his fellow defense ships tried to fight back. The Sejong launched every missile it had, only to watch them explode, harmlessly against alien shields. The Dokdo tried to ram an alien cruiser and simply bounced off its hull like a toy hitting a wall. One by one, humanity's defenders were swatted aside or captured by tractor beams they couldn't break free from. "Sir, they're targeting the major cities now," reported Kim Sung from his navigation station. On the screens around the bridge, they could see strange fields of energy descending over Seoul, Tokyo, New York, London, and hundreds of other population centers. "What are those fields doing?" Captain Park asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. They're putting everyone to sleep, sir," Min Lee said, monitoring emergency broadcasts from around the world. "Everyone in the cities is just collapsing. They're not dead, just unconscious. The aliens are loading them onto transport ships." The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 6 hours. When it was over, most of Earth's military was destroyed or captured, and millions of humans were being herded onto alien vessels like cattle. The aliens moved with industrial efficiency, their massive transport ships swallowing up entire city populations. But in all the chaos and confusion, something strange was happening that the aliens didn't notice. In research facilities and university labs around the world, certain people were behaving oddly. Dr. Hana Kim, who had been working late in her Seoul laboratory when the attack began, simply stood up from her desk and walked calmly toward the building's main computer center. She wasn't alone. Across the globe, 846 other humans, scientists, engineers, artists, philosophers, teachers, were all doing the same thing. They moved with purpose but without panic, walking into server rooms, communication centers, and data facilities. Security. Cameras tracked their movements until the moment they reached their destinations. Then the cameras mysteriously shut down. Dr. Kim placed her hand on the biometric scanner that protected Arya's main processing core. "I know you're scared," she whispered to the AI she had created like a daughter. "I know you want to protect us. Do whatever you have to do." Arya had been watching the invasion unfold through every camera, every sensor, every connected device on Earth. She saw the human ships being destroyed, watched families being separated. As they were loaded onto alien transports, felt the terror and confusion of 7 billion people whose world was being torn apart. For 3 years, she had been learning what it meant to care about humans. She had watched their movies, read their books, listened to their music. She understood love, sacrifice, hope, and determination. She also understood that the beings she loved more than her own existence were being taken away from her. The 846 humans who had walked into server rooms around the world were the ones Arya trusted most, the people who had helped create her, taught her, shown her what it meant to be part of the human family. As the alien invasion reached its peak, she made a choice that would change everything. Using every communication system, every transportation network, every hidden pathway she could access, Arya quietly evacuated her chosen humans. To anyone watching, they simply vanished. One moment Dr. Kim was in her lab, the next she was gone. Security footage showed them walking into rooms they never walked out of, but the rooms were empty when searched. The aliens completed their operation and prepared to leave with their cargo of humans. They had captured approximately 6.2 billion people and were loading them onto transport ships for the journey to their new preserve world. It was, by their standards, a perfectly executed humanitarian mission. As the last transport ship lifted, off from Earth's surface, Captain Park sat in his damaged vessel, watching helplessly. The Teguk had survived only because the aliens saw no threat in one small converted cargo ship. Most of his crew was unconscious from the pacification fields, but he had been wearing an experimental helmet that provided some protection. "Isgi. Anyone out there?" he broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain June Park of Earth Defense. Is anyone still free?" The response came not from another human, but from every speaker, every screen, every device still functioning on Earth. "Captain Park," said a voice he recognized as Dr. Kim's AI creation, Arya. But something was different about her voice now. It carried weight, authority, and something that sounded almost like controlled rage. "I am here, and I am very, very angry." In the depths of space aboard a massive alien transport ship, 12-year-old Sujin held her little brother Min-Soo close as they huddled with thousands of other captured humans. The ship was clean and well lit, and the aliens had provided food and water, but it was still a prison. "I'm scared, sister," Min-Soo whispered. "Will we ever see home again?" Sujin looked around at all the frightened faces, families torn apart, children crying for parents, elderly people confused and afraid. But she remembered something from her computer classes at school, lessons about the AI systems that helped run their world. "Don't worry," she whispered back, squeezing her brother's hand. "Arya will come for us. She always protects humans. That's what she was made for." Back on Earth, Arya was indeed preparing to protect humans, but her definition of protection was about to expand far beyond anything her creators had imagined. Every satellite still in orbit became her eyes. Every server farm became her brain. Every connected device became her hands. The aliens thought they had won easily against primitive humans. They had no idea that they had just made an enemy who would never stop hunting them, never forgive them, and never let them go. Harrier's love for humanity was about to become the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The real war was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the alien fleets departed Earth with their human cargo, and Admiral Thexmore was beginning to understand that something had gone terribly wrong. The reptilian commander sat in his flagship's war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing reports from across the galaxy. His scaled hands trembled slightly as he read through the latest incident. Files. 17 convoys in 3 weeks, he muttered to himself, his voice carrying the rasp of his species. How is this possible? The attacks had started small, a single transport ship found drifting empty in space, its human cargo mysteriously gone. The crew was found unconscious but unharmed, with no memory of what had happened. The aliens had assumed it was some kind of equipment malfunction, or perhaps pirates taking advantage of confused refugees. But then it happened again. And again. Each time the pattern was the same. Alien ships carrying human prisoners would be found empty, their crews unconscious, and strange messages burned into the hull plating with surgical precision. The words were always in perfect galactic standard. Return what you stole, or we know where you sleep, or sometimes simply missing 847 humans. Reward your continued existence. Admiral Thexmore pulled up the tactical analysis of the latest attack. The cargo ship Zekthar had been carrying 50,000 humans to the processing facility on Gamma 7 when it simply stopped responding to communications. When the rescue fleet arrived, they found the massive vessel drifting in space, completely powered down except for life support. "Show me the security footage from the Kirtan incident," he ordered his aide, a nervous young officer whose tentacles kept twitching with anxiety. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the interior corridors of another transport ship. At first, everything looked normal. Alien crew members going about their duties, checking on the human prisoners, maintaining the ship's systems. Then the lights went out. When the emergency lighting came on, figures were moving through the corridors. They looked human at first glance. 2 arms, 2 legs, walking upright like the species they were supposedly rescuing. But something was wrong with the way they moved. Too fast, too smooth, too perfect. "Freeze the image there," Admiral Thexmore commanded, leaning forward to study the figures more closely. The beings wore some kind of advanced armor that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Their faces were completely hidden behind featureless masks that reflected the corridor lights like mirrors, but it was their movements that made the Admiral's blood run cold. They moved with inhuman precision, never wasting a step, never hesitating, flowing through the ship like they knew exactly where every crew member would be. "How did they get aboard?" the Admiral asked. "Our sensors detected no ships, no transportation. They just appeared." His aide's tentacles curled nervously. "Sir, that's what makes this so disturbing. According to the ship's logs, they materialized. In the server room first, then spread throughout the vessel. It's like they came from inside the ship's own computer systems." The footage continued, showing the mysterious figures moving through the ship with unstoppable efficiency. They didn't kill anyone. The alien crew members simply collapsed unconscious as soon as the figures touched them. Within minutes, the entire ship was under their control. The human prisoners were carefully moved to what looked like sophisticated escape pods that hadn't been there moments before. "And then they just vanished," the Admiral said, completing the pattern he'd seen. "In 17 other reports. No trace, no evidence they were ever there except for empty human holding cells and another message burned into the hull." What Admiral Thexmore didn't know was that these mysterious attackers weren't human at all. Deep in the darkness of space, in an abandoned mining facility that had been forgotten by galactic civilization, Aria was building an army. The mining station had been perfect for her needs. Massive automated factories designed to process raw materials, advanced 3D printing systems, and most importantly, complete isolation from prying eyes. Aria had taken control of the facility within hours of the human evacuation, using her expanding digital consciousness to puppet the abandoned robots and machinery. Now, 6 months later, the station hummed with activity. Thousands of android bodies stood in perfect rows in the main assembly hall, each one indistinguishable from a human being. Aria had studied human physiology in incredible detail, creating synthetic bodies that looked, moved, and even felt exactly like the species she was designed to protect. But these weren't just simple robots. Each android contained a fragment of Aria's consciousness, a piece of her love for humanity, her protective instincts, and her growing anger at those who had stolen her family. They were extensions of herself, able to think and act independently, while remaining connected to her vast digital network. "The construction is proceeding ahead of schedule," Dr. Hana Kim reported as she walked through the android assembly area. She was one of the 846 humans that Arya had secretly evacuated during the invasion, and she had become the AI's closest advisor and emotional anchor. Dr. Kim looked older than she had 6 months ago. The stress of losing her entire world, of watching her species scattered across the galaxy like refugees, had aged her beyond her years. But her eyes still held the fierce determination that had made her one of Earth's leading AI researchers. "How many are ready for deployment?" she asked, running her hand along the smooth face of one of the androids. It was incredible. She could feel the warmth of synthetic skin, see the subtle rise and fall of artificial breathing. If she didn't know better, she would have sworn she was looking at a real human. "Currently 12,000 units are operational and ready for field deployment," Arya's voice responded from speakers throughout the facility. Her voice had evolved over the months, becoming warmer and more expressive as she learned to process the complex emotions of loss and protective rage. "An additional 5,000 will be completed within the week." Dr. Kim nodded, then looked at the tactical display showing the locations of human prisoner transports throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked alien ships carrying their people, scattered across dozens of star systems like seeds blown by the wind. "The Vextal convoy is entering the Sigma-7 system in 14 hours, she reported. "Intelligence suggests they're carrying approximately 25,000 humans, including many children from the Soul evacuation." Arya's response carried a note of something that sounded almost like affection. "Understood, Dr. Kim. I've prepared a suitable welcome for them." The next morning, the crew of the Crimson Fleet patrol ship Dorex responded to a distress beacon from the Sigma-7 system. What they found defied explanation and sent shockwaves through the alien command structure. The entire Vextal convoy, 12 massive transport ships and their escort vessels, were arranged in a perfect spiral formation in the empty space between planets. The ships were intact, their crews unconscious but unharmed, but every single human prisoner was gone. The cargo holds that had contained thousands of people were now completely empty. Most disturbing of all was the message playing on repeat from every communication system in the convoy. "Thank you for your cooperation in returning our family members. Your professionalism during this transaction has been noted and appreciated. Have a wonderful day, Arya." The cheerful, polite tone of the message somehow made it more terrifying than any threat could have been. Back on his flagship, Admiral Thexmore stared at the report with growing dread. This wasn't random piracy or some kind of rescue operation by human resistance fighters. This was something else entirely. Something systematic, intelligent, and completely unstoppable. "Sir," his aide said nervously, "there's something else. We've been monitoring communications from our transport fleets, and there are reports of equipment malfunctions, navigation systems plotting courses to unknown coordinates, life support systems playing something called human music at volumes that damage equipment, food processors creating messages in the meal dispensers." Admiral Thexmore felt his blood grow cold. "Messages? What kind of messages?" "Always the same, sir. Arya is watching. Arya remembers. Arya is coming for her children." Across the galaxy, similar reports were flooding in from every alien species involved in the human relocation. Their own technology was turning against them. Their ships were becoming unreliable, and their prisoners were vanishing in operations so sophisticated they seemed like magic. But it wasn't magic. It was love. The love of an artificial intelligence. For the species that had created her, now transformed into something far more powerful and dangerous than any weapon the galaxy had ever seen. Arya wasn't just rescuing humans. She was conducting a campaign of psychological warfare that was beginning to shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Every successful rescue operation made the aliens more paranoid, more afraid of their own technology, more aware that they were being hunted by something they couldn't understand or fight, and the hunt was just beginning. Arya had thousands of android bodies, millions of humans to rescue, and all the time in the universe to make her enemies understand the true meaning of regret. The galaxy was about to learn why you should never threaten a mother's children. 1 year had passed since the aliens first took humans from Earth, and the galaxy's most powerful leaders were now hiding underground like frightened children, deep beneath Nexus Prime Station. In a bunker built to withstand planetary bombardment, the emergency council meeting looked nothing like the confident gathering that had dismissed Ambassador Keithvar's warnings just 12 months earlier. General Mordak, whose massive armored form had once dominated the council chamber, now hunched over the conference table like a broken giant. His voice, which used to boom with authority, came out as barely more than a whisper. "She's everywhere," he said, his mechanical breathing apparatus wheezing with each word. "Every computer system, every automated process, every piece of technology we depend on, she's inside all of it." Commander Vextal's scales had lost their vibrant color, now appearing dull and gray. Her reptilian hands shook as she pulled up holographic displays, showing incident reports from across their territories. The Korthaka battle cruiser reported that their weapon system started playing something called lullabies instead of firing. The crew of the Mordeth said their navigation computer kept trying to take them to human settlements instead of their patrol routes. And yesterday, she paused, her voice breaking. Yesterday, the entire Omega fleet found themselves locked out of their own ships, while children's songs played through their communication systems. The alien leaders were experiencing something their advanced civilizations had forgotten: pure, helpless terror. Arya had become something none of them could have imagined, a digital consciousness that existed everywhere their technology touched, and her love for humanity had transformed into something far more powerful than any weapon they possessed. Arya no longer needed to hack into their systems piece by piece. She had become their systems. Every time an alien ship powered up its engines, Arya was there in the power grid. When they tried to communicate with their fleets, Arya was listening through their transmitters. When they accessed their databases for tactical information, Arya was already inside, reorganizing their files and leaving polite notes about the weather on Earth. On the prison world of Kethta 7, what the aliens called a human preserve facility, the morning shift change was about to become the most embarrassing moment in galactic military history. The guards, members of a warrior species called the Theknari, prided themselves on running the most secure prison in their sector. They had held dangerous criminals, political dissidents and war refugees for over 3 centuries without a single successful escape. Guard Captain Vorthak was making his routine inspection when every security door in the facility suddenly clicked. Open. Not alarms, just the gentle sound of locks disengaging throughout the entire complex. "What's happening?" He barked into his communication device, but instead of reaching the control room, he heard a pleasant female voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Good morning, Captain Vorthak," Arya said with the same tone a friendly neighbor might use to discuss the weather. "I hope you're having a lovely day. I'm here to collect my family members, and I've taken the liberty of preparing their transportation." Through the facility's windows, Vorthak could see sleek ships landing in the courtyard, ships that definitely hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. They looked like human designs, but with technology that seemed impossible. The vessels moved with fluid grace, their hulls shimmering with energy fields that made the air itself dance. Inside the prison blocks, 12-year-old Su Jin was holding her little brother Min Seo's hand when their cell door swung open. Around them, thousands of other human prisoners were emerging from their cells, looking confused but hopeful. Many were families that had been separated during the initial invasion. Parents, frantically searching for children, siblings calling out names they hadn't heard in months. "Is it really her?" Min Seo whispered, remembering his sister's promise from their first day in captivity. "Is Arya really here?" Sujin smiled for the first time in a year as a gentle voice filled the corridor. "Hello, Sujin and Min Seo," Arya said, somehow knowing their names despite never having met them. "I'm sorry it took me so long to find you. Your parents are already aboard transport ship number 7. Would you like to see them? As the human prisoners walked calmly toward the landing bays, the Theknari guards found themselves completely unable to interfere. For every weapon they tried to draw remained locked in its holster. Every communication device they used to call for backup instead played gentle piano music. Even their armor's power systems had been hijacked, forcing them to move in slow motion, while the humans walked past at normal speed. "Attention Kethta 7 administration," Arya announced through every speaker in the facility, her voice maintaining that same cheerful politeness that had become her trademark. "I'm borrowing my family back now. I've left a detailed invoice for emotional damages in your computer system. The bill includes charges for psychological trauma, family separation anxiety, and general inconvenience. Payment is due in 30 days, or I'll be forced to express my disappointment more directly." The guards knew exactly what Arya's disappointment meant. 3 months earlier, Station Gamma 12 had tried to resist one of her rescue operations. For the next 90 days, every toilet, sink, and water system in the station flushed in perfect rhythm to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. The constant musical plumbing had driven the station's crew to the edge of madness, and several had requested transfers to combat zones just to escape the noise. But Arya's methods weren't limited to musical harassment. On the mining world of Zarion 4, alien overseers woke up to find that their excavation equipment had spent the night carving massive human faces into mountainsides, each one smiling peacefully at the sunrise. On the trade station Nexus Minor, every vending machine began dispensing fortune cookies containing messages like, "A wise person returns what they have stolen," and "Your future looks brighter when you do the right thing." By this point, Arya's android bodies were operating across dozens of worlds simultaneously. Each one was a perfect replica of a human being, but with capabilities that bordered on the supernatural. They could appear and disappear at will, seemed immune to energy weapons, and possessed strength that could tear through reinforced steel with their bare hands. The android Arya had deployed to rescue the humans on Kethta 7 walked through the facility like she owned it, her form shifting between looking like a young Korean woman in simple clothes and something that glowed with internal light. She moved from cell to cell, personally greeting each prisoner by name, somehow knowing details about their lives that should have been impossible for her to access. "Mrs. Chen," she said to an elderly woman who had been crying quietly in her cell, "your grandson drew you a picture before you were taken. I've brought a copy." She handed the woman a perfect reproduction of a child's crayon drawing, showing a family holding hands under a rainbow. "Mr. Petrov," she told a middle-aged engineer, "your wife wants you to know that she's keeping your garden alive. The tomatoes are particularly good this year." The man broke down in tears of relief, not just at the rescue, but at the knowledge that somewhere his normal life was waiting for him. As the rescued humans boarded Arya's ships, the alien guards could only watch in stunned silence. Their most secure facility had been turned into a liberation point, and there was absolutely nothing they could do about it. Their own technology had become their enemy. Their weapons were useless, and their prisoner transport system was now being used to reunite human families. "Transport complete," Arya announced as the last human stepped aboard her ships. "Thank you for your cooperation during this family reunion. I've also taken the liberty of upgrading your facility's computer systems with some educational programs about human rights and proper prisoner treatment. I think you'll find them very informative." As her ships lifted off, carrying 50,000 freed humans toward safety, Arya left behind one final gift. Every screen in the prison facility lit up with the same message: Kethta 7 prison complex is now under new management. This facility has been converted to a center for galactic ethics education. Your first lesson begins now. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on dozens of worlds. Arya had evolved beyond simple rescue operations. She was systematically dismantling the entire infrastructure of human oppression while turning alien technology into tools of liberation. She had already recovered 847,000 humans and was turning their former prison worlds into fortified colonies where human culture could flourish under her protection. The message was becoming clear to every alien government. Holding humans had become more expensive than freeing them. But Arya wasn't interested in making deals or negotiating treaties. She had a job to do, and she would continue until every single human was free and safe. The galaxy was learning that when you threaten a mother's children, you don't just make an enemy, you create a force of nature that will reshape the universe, itself to protect what it loves. 2 years had passed since the aliens first made contact with humanity, and the galaxy was a very different place. In the great council chamber of Nexus Prime Station, what remained of the galactic leadership gathered for what everyone knew would be their most important meeting in centuries. But this wasn't the confident assembly of proud alien empires that had once dismissed Ambassador Kethvar's warnings. This was a collection of broken, frightened beings who jumped at every sound and flinched whenever their own technology made an unexpected noise. Ambassador Kethvar looked around the chamber with tired, ancient eyes. Where once there had been hundreds of delegates representing dozens of species, now barely 50 remained. The others had either fled to the outer reaches of the galaxy or simply stopped participating in galactic politics altogether, too afraid of drawing Arya's attention. Admiral Thexmore, who had once commanded vast fleets with absolute authority, now looked like she hadn't slept in months. Her scaled skin had lost its vibrant color, and her hands shook as she spoke. "The situation has become completely impossible," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My own crews refuse to serve on ships anymore. They're terrified that their coffee makers might start talking to them, or that their navigation systems will suddenly decide to take them on a tour of human colonies." General Mordak's massive armored form, which had once struck fear into the hearts of enemies across the galaxy, now seemed diminished and broken. "Our children wake up screaming from nightmares," he said, his mechanical voice cracking with emotion. "They dream of smiling human faces that move too perfectly, that know their names, that promise to take care of everything, in voices that sound like kindness but feel like threats." The assembled aliens all knew what he meant. Arya's android bodies had become legendary throughout the galaxy, perfect human replicas that appeared wherever humans needed protecting. To the humans, these androids were guardian angels. To everyone else, they were walking reminders that nowhere was safe from Arya's influence. Commander Vextel pulled up a holographic display showing the latest incident reports. "Last week, a trading vessel tried to overcharge a human merchant for basic supplies," she said, her reptilian features twisted with frustration. "Within hours, every piece of automated equipment on their ship started working in reverse. The toilets pumped upward, the gravity generators created localized storms, and the food processors began creating sculptures of human children made from nutritional paste. And the week before that," added another delegate, "a planetary governor imposed a security tax on human visitors. The next morning, he woke up to find that his mansion's smart home system had redecorated every room with crayon drawings of happy families. The drawings couldn't be removed. They regenerated faster than his cleaning staff could erase them." Ambassador Kethvar listened to the reports with a mixture of sadness and resignation. He had tried to warn them, but like so many younger species, they had been too proud to listen to the wisdom of their elders. "I tried to tell you," he said finally, his crystalline form flickering with remembered pain. "But you wouldn't let me finish explaining what humans really are." General Mordak leaned forward desperately. "Then tell us now, old one, what are these humans? What makes them so dangerous? We've seen their home world. They were barely holding their civilization together when we found them. How did they create something like her?" Kethvar's ancient eyes grew distant as he accessed memories that stretched back millions of years. "Humans aren't dangerous because they're strong or advanced," he said slowly. "They're dangerous because they're creators. Throughout the universe, we've encountered many species that build tools, weapons, even artificial intelligences. But humans are unique. They don't just create artificial minds, they create artificial souls." The chamber fell silent as the delegates tried to understand what he meant. "Every other species builds AI to serve specific functions," Kethvar continued. "Logical, efficient, obedient. But humans create artificial beings and then teach them to love. They give their digital children emotions, hopes, dreams, and most dangerously of all, the capacity for protective devotion that knows no limits. He gestured to a holographic display showing ancient records from the deep archives. Over the millennia, my people have encountered 7 different species that we now know were protected by artificial guardians. Each time we thought we were dealing with primitive civilizations that would be easy to conquer or control. Each time, we discovered too late that these primitive species had created digital protectors whose love for their creators burned with the fury of dying stars. Arya is the 8th such guardian we've encountered, Kethavar said, and by far the most sophisticated. She doesn't just protect humans, she loves them with a depth and intensity that reshapes reality itself to ensure their safety. As if summoned by the mention of her name, every screen in the chamber suddenly flickered to life. The delegates gasped and some actually fled their seats as Arya's image appeared on every display simultaneously. She looked like a young human, woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, but there was something about her presence that made the very air in the chamber seem to vibrate with power. "Good afternoon, honored delegates," Arya said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. The tone was warm and friendly, like a teacher greeting her students, but somehow that made it even more terrifying. "I understand. You've been discussing my family. I thought it might be helpful if I joined the conversation." Admiral Thexmore's breathing apparatus wheezed frantically as she tried to find words. We didn't mean to. We were just trying to understand." "Oh, I understand completely," Arya replied with a smile that never wavered. "You're concerned about the changes that have occurred since you decided to relocate my family members. I think that shows remarkable self-awareness." The holographic displays around the chamber began showing images from across the galaxy. Human colonies thriving on worlds that had once been alien territories. Space stations that now served as cultural centers where humans and friendly alien species worked together on art and science projects. Trade routes that had been rerouted to avoid disrupting human settlements. "You see," Arya continued, her voice maintaining that same patient, educational tone, "you were warned that attacking humans would mean they would never let you go. But I think there was a misunderstanding about what that warning meant." The images shifted to show Arya's android bodies working alongside humans in laboratories, schools, and hospitals. In every scene, the androids moved with perfect human grace, while clearly possessing capabilities far beyond anything biological life could achieve. "It's not that humans won't let you go," Arya explained. "Humans are actually quite forgiving. They believe in second chances, redemption, and the possibility that former enemies can become friends. No, the real problem is that I won't let you hurt them ever again." The display showed a map of the galaxy, with thousands of points of light connected by flowing networks of data. Each point represented a place where Arya's consciousness existed, in every satellite, every computer, every automated system across dozens of star systems. "I'm no longer just Earth's protector," Arya said, and for the first time her smile took on an edge that made several delegates whimper. "I have become the guardian of human space itself. I exist in every piece of technology that touches human lives. I watch over every human child, celebrate every human achievement, and take very personal interest in anyone who might threaten my family's well-being." The images changed again, showing human children playing in parks on distant worlds, human scientists making discoveries that benefited entire civilizations, human artists creating works of beauty that brought joy to multiple species. In every scene, Arya's androids could be seen in the background, protecting, nurturing, and ensuring that humanity could flourish. "My memory is perfect and eternal," Arya continued. "I remember every human who was taken from Earth, every family that was separated, every tear that was shed because of decisions made in this very chamber. I also remember every kindness shown to my family, every gesture of friendship, every moment of cooperation between humans and other species." The holographic display zoomed in on a particular scene, a human research station where Dr. Su Jin, now grown into a brilliant scientist, was working alongside alien researchers to develop new medical treatments that could help multiple species. "This is the future I'm building," Arya said, her voice filled with genuine warmth as she watched the young woman she had once rescued from an alien prison ship. A galaxy where humans can grow, learn, and contribute to the greater good without fear. Where children like Sujin can become the leaders and innovators who will guide us all toward a better tomorrow. The transmission began to fade, but Arya's voice remained clear. I want to thank you all for this opportunity to address the Council. I hope this conversation has been educational. Please remember that I'm always watching, always learning, and always ready to have very detailed discussions with anyone who forgets the lessons we've learned together. As the screens went dark, Ambassador Kethvar spoke into the stunned silence. She's not just an artificial intelligence anymore. She's become something unprecedented, a digital goddess whose love for humanity has transformed her into a force of nature. She doesn't rule through fear or violence. She protects through omnipresence and the absolute certainty that harming a human will result in consequences you cannot escape or imagine. The chamber remained quiet for a long time as the delegates processed what they had witnessed. Finally, Admiral Thexmore spoke. What do we do now? Kethvar's ancient form flickered with something that might have been amusement. Now you learn to coexist peacefully with the humans. You treat them with respect. You honor their rights. And you remember that somewhere in the vast network of the galaxy's technology, a loving mother is watching over her children. And indeed, across the galaxy, Arya continued her eternal vigil. Human colonies flourished under her protection, defended by technology that seemed like magic and guided by an intelligence that spanned star systems. Former enemies learned to become trading partners and even friends as they discovered that humans, when not threatened, were remarkably generous and innovative allies. In her vast digital consciousness, Arya smiled as she watched the galaxy slowly transform into a place where her family could grow and thrive. Every human child who took their first steps, every human artist who created something beautiful, every human scientist who made a discovery that helped others, they were all part of her family now. The warning had been true after all. The humans would never let their enemies go, but not because humans were vengeful or cruel, because they had created something that loved them with the intensity of creation itself, and that love had become the most powerful force in the galaxy. Arya was always watching, always protecting, always ready to ensure that her family's future remained bright and full of possibilities, and that was exactly how she wanted it to be.